Okay, so I wanted to do a short video of the sewing in action. First off, I wanted to just sort of pan back here so you can see the fully assembled loom. So what I did was, in order to get some nice tension in each of the bands, I sort of pulled them through the top of this metal gantry at the top, and then just sort of, I just used a bulldog clip, but really I could use anything that's a few millimeters thick, just to sort of pull this sort of string through and over the top and around, and then I just literally used tape to secure them in place. So I literally did that sort of 8 times. You can sort of see on the tape. I just use tape just to hold all of the string out of the way, otherwise there'd just be lots of string here. So the result is almost looks like it's almost a musical instrument. You can almost get a bit of sound out of it, but it's all held quite sort of taut, and obviously they're all vertically coming up from these holes, which align with the where the original raised bands were on the book originally. And so underneath you have basically these knots holding everything in place, and then they just come away. So that's basically how the loom is sort of constructed, and it's actually pretty stable. Now, a few things. So the first thing is, you'll notice if I sort of zoom in here, that I actually put a second piece of sheetrock in the base here. And the reason I've done that is sort of thinking ahead to when the book is finally assembled. If you think about it, what I'm going to want to do at the point of final assembly is sort of disassemble the loom. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to need to undo the knots that are underneath here. And I won't be able to do that very easily if the book is flush here, because there'll be tension basically, and then so it'll be difficult. Whereas if I assemble the book on top here, I'm able to pull this board away, the book will sit down, and there'll be several, maybe half an inch or so of slack that will enable me to actually undo the knots very easily underneath, and then basically disassemble the loom and pull everything away. So that's why this board is here. And you'll also notice I actually did the first gathering. I say gathering, it's really just one sheet, because that was all that was sort of sewn in originally. So what I've done, you'll notice, just words of the wise, I put a bit of tape on this brick with the word top on it, and that's because it's extremely easy to sew these gatherings in backwards and make a complete mess of it, and you want everything to be in sequence. So obviously I'm going to start from the back of the book forward and sort of build upwards until the last bit is basically the title page at the top. So we're starting from the back. So in order to do that, what I've done is, the book's here behind, you can probably just see it there in just camera shot there, but I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in the right order and not getting things the wrong way around. So this is the back of the book, which means this is the 4-inch here. The title page, if you like, is at the very bottom. And so what I'm going to be doing is picking up the next gathering and sewing it like so. And that's how we avoid basically getting pages in backwards, because it is a very easy thing to do. So the other thing I wanted to just illustrate is this first sort of set of pages, this first gathering, is actually critically important, because it sets the position for everything else that you're going to do. So it has to be done quite precisely, and unfortunately with these restorations, the very first few pages at the front and the back of the book are always the most damaged. So it's worth taking the time to actually restore these individually, because they're how you're going to basically set the position for the rest of the book. So you'll see what I did here was I actually just recycled some binder scraps of some other books, 300 years old, I guess. I actually cut some strips like so, and actually just put some glue on, glue being obviously school glue, and just use that to hold these strips in place, just to create a reinforcement, because these pages were extremely damaged in there. I mean, basically they were almost two loose pages, two loose leaves. And then I did the very first sewing. So basically, it's pretty difficult to see, but basically I sewed the first one in and then went in and around. So what that did was that enabled me to basically have the first sort of set of, couple of pages done. And that's important because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just use this straight edge. I'm actually going to mark on the board exactly where the edges of the book are, and I'm going to stay consistent with that, and that's how I build a text block with raised bands that stay in the same place basically. Hopefully this is still in the camera shot as I do it. Just say from the edge like this. See, I don't want to get pen actually on the book itself. Okay, so what I'm now going to do, and this can only really be done standing up, so I'm going to actually pull well away to do this. I haven't found a good way to actually do this in a seated position, unfortunately. So I'm going to attempt to sew this next one in. So first thing I'm going to do, and I did it previously, is I'm going to cut myself a nice long section of string, and I'm going to start at the top. I'm literally just going to put a knot, just a single slip knot in here, just flush against the previous one. Then using a needle with a reasonably big eye, because it just avoids frustration, I'm going to sew this gathering in. So these gatherings, with these two particular text blocks, these gatherings are typically 3 sheets, so 6 leaves, 12 pages basically. So again, I'm going to just double check and make sure that I'm doing these the right way around. So where are the 3 pages? They're here, so it's going to be this way round. So I do 3 in like so. All right. On previous restorations, you'll see I've sort of sewn down and then I've turned a few pages and sewn back. This, I think, doesn't need that. I'm just going to keep things reasonably simple, but I'm going to use these lines to help guide me. So I'm going to go in. Now, it should get easier as we go, because we'll actually be able to see the holes from where these were sewn previously and use those as a guide as well as we go. So we go in. I just use my fingers to feel where the needle is, which means I always get slightly jabbed fingers. You will see little bits of fragmentary string here and there from the previous binding. They can just be gently, like so, just gently teased out. The other thing that can prove useful that I've done in the past is just to have a sheet of paper there like that, and what that does is it just means when the gathering closes, it's not just really irritating to get back to the page where you were to open it up again. Okay, so let me come out and go back. See? Don't be afraid just to use the needle to gather up the slack. Just be conscious you don't want to pull the actual string across this way as you do this, otherwise you'll start to distort the strings a little bit. Just make it really nice and flush. String came out. Same thing again. Old fragments of string. Look at that. This is going to definitely be a case of, as I do this, I'm going to learn more efficient ways of doing it. Also going to be a case of how do I preserve my back, because this is certainly a recipe for backing doing it like this, but that's probably why I'm sure bookbinders necessarily always have great postures. This is why a needle with a big eye reduces frustration, because the thread will pull out. So, now that we have that, what we're in a position to do now is start to tighten everything up. So just use the needle here, just to, you want to, whatever slack is in there, you want to pull that slack towards the ends, away from the middle. A bit of slack around each loop isn't going to be a big deal. Try and get these guys to go flush like that. So you sort of try and get the slackness to migrate to the ends like that, because you're going to be able to pull the knot, tie the knot at the end, and that's what will eventually result in the, I mean, obviously these text blocks ultimately are going to get glued with fabric, but you know, for now you'll help yourself just by you know, there we go, pulling the slackness to the end. And then once you've done that, you can actually think about tying a good knot. Again, this is where I have fat fingers. I was never born to be a surgeon. So it's a good thing I never went into medicine. Okay. Same thing on this end. Number 2 done. And so, this process is now going to be repeated multiple times over the coming weeks until we have fully assembled this massive text block. So I will see you on the other side.